Some rides never end, some trains never stop, and some whispers, once heard, stay with you forever. Tonight I'm telling you a story about Katori Halt, an abandoned railway station in India where the dead still wait for their last ride. A train with no number, a whistle that calls from the dark, and a secret buried beneath the tracks. Turn off the lights, listen closely, because once you hear the whistle, it might already be too late. The night smelled of rust and rain. The moon hung crooked over the railway tracks, casting pale scars on the earth. I stood there alone at the abandoned Katori Halt station, a place where time itself seemed to have given up. The clock on the platform had stopped ticking long ago, its hands frozen at 3:15 a.m., the hour they say when the dead whisper. I didn't believe in ghosts, not until that night. The night I heard the train that was never supposed to return. The air felt thicker as I leaned against the cold iron bench, waiting for the last train to Bhopal. They told me it would never come, not since the incident. Yet, somewhere deep in the dark, I heard it. That distant whistle. Faint, broken, like a voice trying to find its way back from the other side. My heart clenched tight. Nobody else seemed to hear it, but I did. The railway master, an old man with hollow eyes, sat smoking his beedi in the shadows, pretending not to notice. When I asked him about the train, he simply muttered one sentence without even looking at me. Some rides never end, Sahib. They only forget where to stop. His voice crawled under my skin. I could feel something shifting in the air, something watching. The tracks shimmered under the pale moonlight, stretching into the blackness. A dry wind whispered through the platform, carrying a scent I couldn't quite place. Something old. Something burnt. And then I saw it. Far down the tracks, two faint headlights pierced through the fog, like eyes crawling back from the grave. The sound followed, that slow metallic screech, wheels dragging against rusted rails. My throat dried up. The train was coming. But there was no engine number, no passengers, just a dark, empty shell rolling through the night, the numberless train they called it. The train that had vanished 40 years ago with all its passengers, only to reappear on moonless nights carrying shadows instead of souls. My legs froze as the train screeched to a stop. The doors slid open with a hollow gasp, like something exhaling from the other side. I wanted to run, but something called me in. I stepped inside. The compartment smelled of mildew and old breath. The seats were torn, their cushions slashed open as if someone had been searching for something inside. Broken luggage still hung overhead, and the silence. It was the kind of silence that listens back. Then I saw them, the passengers. They sat in perfect stillness, their faces hidden beneath thick shawls and dusty hats, all of them facing forward, none of them moving, none of them breathing. My heart hammered against my ribs. I tried to tell myself they were just mannequins, leftover props from some forgotten journey, until one of them turned their head, a woman wrapped in a blood-red saree. Her face was pale, her lips stitched shut with black thread. Her empty eyes locked onto mine, hollow and glistening. Slowly, painfully, she smiled. I stumbled back, crashing into a seat. The whole compartment seemed to shift around me, the air turning heavy with the smell of burnt flesh. I wanted to scream, but the train had already begun to move. No whistle, no conductor, just the endless sound of wheels dragging across the tracks, pulling me deeper into the night. As the train gained speed, the shadows began to stir. The passengers slowly turned their heads, one by one, faces peeling, eyes empty, mouths stitched shut. I don't remember how long I sat there, trapped in that rotting coffin on wheels. But somewhere between sleep and terror, I heard whispers seeping from the cracks in the walls. We never reached home. They buried us in the tunnels. Find our bones, or join us. I snapped awake to the sound of laughter. Soft, broken laughter echoing down the compartments. My own breath froze in my throat as I turned toward the source. The woman in the red sari was standing right behind me. Closer now. Her stitched mouth began to tremble, as if trying to speak. I couldn't move. I couldn't scream. All I could hear was the faint rattle of the train, and the voice in my ear, colder than death itself. Next stop. Katori Halt. The train's whistle howled through the dark, shaking the windows. And then, just like that, everything went black. When I opened my eyes, I was lying on the platform bench. The sun was rising, the train was gone. But the old railway master was still there, smoking his bidie in the same spot. He looked at me, those hollow eyes sharper now, like they had seen something crawl out of me in the night. "You heard the whistle, didn't you?" he muttered. I nodded, unable to speak. He smiled faintly. "They always come back for the ones who listen." I never found that train again. But sometimes, on sleepless nights, I still hear it. That broken whistle slicing through the dark, calling for passengers who never made it home. The ones who still ride the tracks, waiting, watching, listening. Some nights feel heavier than others, the kind of nights where shadows lean in too close, where silence isn't empty but crowded. Ever since that night on the train, sleep had become a luxury I could no longer afford. The whispers had followed me back, faint, broken voices scratching at the edges of my dreams. They never spoke in full sentences, just fragments, pieces of something they wanted me to understand. Bind us. Under the rails. They buried the truth. In the dark. No matter how tightly I shut my eyes, they always found a way in. Creepypasta Halt had become an obsession, the kind that gnaws at your mind until you can't let go. The old railway master watched me from his corner every night, those hollow eyes flickering beneath the yellow glow of the lantern. He never spoke again after that night, just sat there, smoking, watching, like he was waiting for something, or someone. But there was something beneath the station. I could feel it, something hidden, forgotten. I had to know. The third night after the train, I went back. The platform was empty, abandoned like a ghost still waiting for its own body to return. The clock remained frozen at 3:15 a.m. The wind carried that same burnt smell, like something old still rotting beneath the earth. I walked along the edge of the platform, my flashlight flickering through the broken tiles. The whispers grew louder the deeper I went, pulling me toward the far end where the tracks curved into darkness. The ground beneath my feet felt softer here, loose, as if something had been buried. That's when I saw it, a faint crack in the earth, running along the platform's edge. My heart hammered in my chest. I dropped to my knees and began digging with bare hands. The soil was damp, colder than it should have been, and then my fingers scraped against metal. A hatch, rusted shut. I should have stopped. Every part of me screamed to walk away, but the whispers wouldn't let me. I forced the hatch open with a broken iron rod, the hinges groaning like something waking up after decades of sleep. A foul breath seeped out, damp, stale air rising from the black mouth beneath the station. There was a ladder leading down into the dark. I don't remember climbing down. I only remember the sound. That soft, broken laughter echoing from somewhere deep below. The tunnel stretched endlessly beneath the station, narrow walls lined with crumbling bricks, sweating with moisture. My flashlight barely cut through the darkness, its beam shaking in my hand. That's when I found them. The marks, names carved into the walls, hundreds of them scratched into the brick with nails or knives, some fresh, some so old the letters had crumbled away. I traced my fingers across one name, my heart turning to ice. Leela Sharma. The woman in the red sari. The same stitched mouth, the same hollow eyes that had followed me through the train. I staggered back, nearly dropping the flashlight. My breath caught in my throat. And then I saw something. Something that shouldn't have been possible. A fresh name, carved into the wall in letters still dripping red. My name. My legs buckled beneath me. The tunnel seemed to close in, the whispers rising into a suffocating chorus. They were all around me now, unseen hands brushing against my skin, cold breath crawling down my neck. I tried to run, but the tunnel didn't want me to leave. I don't remember how long I wandered down there. Maybe minutes, maybe hours. Time didn't work the same beneath the earth. I kept hearing the train, the distant rattle of wheels echoing through the walls. But there were no tracks down there. Only bones, piled in corners, buried half in the walls. Some still wrapped in the tattered remains of clothes, saris, uniforms, school dresses, passengers who never made it home. They had buried them here, sealed the tunnel beneath the station, and pretended they never existed. I sank to my knees, bile rising in my throat. The whispers crowded around me, louder now, pleading, begging, "Find our bones or join us." My hands trembled as I reached into the dirt, pulling out brittle fingers, cracked skulls, wedding bangles still clinging to rotted wrists. They wanted to be found. They wanted to be remembered. But some secrets are better left buried. I don't know how I got out. The next thing I remember, I was standing back on the platform, the first light of dawn bleeding across the sky. The hatch was gone, sealed beneath fresh cement, as if the earth itself had swallowed the truth whole. The railway master was still there, sitting in his corner, smoking his bidie. He didn't look at me, didn't speak. But as I stumbled past him, I saw something. Something tucked beneath his shawl. A small, rusted whistle, the kind only railway conductors carried. He turned it slowly between his fingers, like he'd been waiting for me to find it. "They never stopped riding," he muttered without looking up. "They just needed someone to blow the whistle again." I haven't gone back to Catori Halt since that night, but the whispers haven't stopped. I still hear the train on moonless nights, that distant broken whistle echoing through the dark. And sometimes, when I close my eyes, I see my name still carved into the tunnel wall. Fresh. Waiting. Some wounds never heal. They fester beneath the skin, unseen, unheard, waiting to rot you from within. It's been 5 nights since I crawled out from beneath Catori Halt. 5 nights since I touched the bones of the forgotten dead. The whispers haven't left me. They cling to my shadow. They breathe through the cracks in the walls. I see her sometimes. Leela Sharma. The woman in the red sari, standing at the edge of my vision, just close enough for her stitched smile to follow me wherever I go. I don't sleep anymore. Not really. Every time I close my eyes, I hear the train again, rattling through endless tunnels that never seem to end. But the worst part is the whistle. It follows me. I tried to leave Catori Halt behind. I really did. I packed my bags, bought a one-way ticket to the Bhopal. But the moment I set foot on the next station platform, I heard it. That distant, broken whistle. Echoing through the night like something trying to call me back. No one else hears it. Not the passengers. Not the station master. Just me. Like the train knows my name now. Last night, I saw the old railway master again, the one who never speaks unless the dark presses in too close. He was standing at the edge of the platform, his body glowing faint beneath the shadows. I don't know how long he'd been watching me, but when I passed him, he muttered something under his breath. "You shouldn't have gone down there." His voice was softer this time, almost sad. I stopped. My mouth felt dry. "What did they bury beneath the station?" I asked. He didn't answer, just flicked his bidie onto the tracks and walked away, leaving something small behind on the bench where he'd been sitting. A whistle, rusted, dented. The same one I'd seen tucked beneath his shawl. I didn't want to touch it, but my hands moved on their own. It was still warm. They say ghosts can't hurt you if you don't invite them in, but some doors never close once they're opened. That night, I couldn't sleep. The whistle sat on the table beside my bed, heavy in the dark, like it carried all the weight of those forgotten names carved into the tunnel walls. Around 3:15 a.m., the whispers began again. I heard them sliding beneath the door, clogging the air in the room. Blow it, call us back, finish the ride. I don't remember lifting the whistle to my lips. I swear to God, I don't remember. But when I woke up, cold sweat soaking through my clothes, the whistle was resting on my pillow, and there was dirt beneath my fingernails. By the time dawn broke, I'd made up my mind. I had to go back. Not because I wanted to, but because something down there still needed me. I spent the whole day digging through old railway archives, bribing the station clerk with a bottle of cheap rum for access to the locked records. Most of the files were missing. Burnt in some fire decades ago, they said, but I found one. A single yellowed page buried beneath stacks of forgotten paperwork. Manifest number 213, dated June 6, 1982. The last passenger list of the numberless train. 47 names, all marked missing, presumed dead. One name caught my eye. Brijmohan Das, railway master, Catori Halt. The same hollow-eyed man who'd been watching me all these nights. He died in 1982, but he never left. I returned to Katori Halt that night. The station looked even older in the moonlight, as if the years had been peeling it away piece by piece. The clock still frozen at 3:15 a.m. The old railway master was there, waiting for me. He didn't speak this time, just stood in the shadows, his beady flickering between his fingers, watching. I walked to the far end of the platform, the same spot where the earth had split open beneath my hands. The cement was still fresh, but I could feel something breathing underneath. The whistle hung heavy in my pocket, pulling me toward the tracks like a magnet. I knelt down, pressed my ear to the rails. At first, nothing. And then, chut, chut. The slow, distant rattle of wheels dragging through tunnels that shouldn't exist. I felt the cold breath crawl up the back of my neck before I heard her voice. They'd buried us alive. I turned slowly. Leela Sharma was standing on the platform, red sari billowing in the dead wind. Her lips still stitched shut, but the black thread was starting to unravel. One stitch at a time. I don't remember running. I only remember the whistle in my hand, cold metal pressed between my fingers, heavier than any weight I'd ever carried. And Brij Mohan Das, still watching from the shadows. He smiled this time. A smile that said he knew I would come back. They all come back. Once you hear the whistle, he told me once, you're already on board. I'm writing this now from a small hotel room 20 miles away from Katori Halt. But I know it doesn't matter. They'll find me again. The train always finds its passengers, even the ones who try to run. Tomorrow night, I'll hear the whistle again, and this time, I think I'll blow it. Some stories aren't meant to be told. They live in the cracks, buried beneath rusted rails and forgotten stations. I thought I could survive this. I thought I could outrun the whispers. But the train never stops until the last passenger boards. That night, I blew the whistle. The sound sliced through the dark, sharp, broken, like something screaming through metal lungs. For a moment, everything went still. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. And then, I heard it. Far away at first, that slow, rattling crawl. The train was coming, but this time, it was coming for me. I stood frozen on the empty platform as the headlights pierced through the fog, two sickly yellow eyes dragging themselves out of the dark. The same nameless train, the same silent compartments. Its doors slid open with that hollow gasp, inviting me in. But I didn't move. Not this time. I gripped the whistle tight in my fist and stepped back. I know what you are. I whispered into the night. The train listened. Behind me, the shadows began to stir. They rose from beneath the platform, faces stitched shut, hollow eyes glistening in the dark. Leela Sharma stood among them, her red sari trailing like blood across the gravel. The thread had unraveled completely now. Her mouth hung open, but no sound came out. Only the whispers. Finish the ride. Blow the whistle. Join us. I don't know what made me do it. Maybe madness. Maybe something darker buried inside me all along. But I stepped forward and pressed the whistle to my lips again. Only this time, I blew 3 short notes. One for the dead, one for the forgotten, one to call the train home. The ground trembled beneath my feet. The passengers screamed, a chorus of broken voices rising into the night as the train began to crumble before my eyes. Metal twisted, windows shattered, bones spilled out from beneath the seats. The whole train was made of them, a coffin on wheels, a tomb that had been riding the rails for 40 years. The whispers howled through the night, swirling around me, pulling at my breath, at my soul. But I stood my ground, clutching the whistle tighter. You don't need me, I whispered. You never did. One by one, the stitched mouths began to unravel, voices breaking free into the cold night air. Leela Sharma was the last. She stood at the edge of the platform, eyes locked on mine, before her body slowly began to fade into dust. The train screeched one final time, its broken wheels grinding to a stop. And then, it was gone. I woke up at dawn. No train, no shadows, just the old railway master sitting in his corner, smoking his beedi like